What do you look for in a crime fiction festival? Bestsellers? Prize winners? A new favourite crime writer? At Gwyl Crime Cymru Festival in spring 2023, we'll be offering all of these. But much, much more will be available. Because the home of our festival is Aberystwyth, a little town with a long history and a big heart. Once home to Welsh princes, Aberystwyth is now home to the National Library of Wales and Aberystwyth University. The sweep of the town's Regency seafront pulls the tourists in from around the globe. Aberystwyth even offers the chance to watch dolphins as well as crime writers. Festival goers will be able to enjoy gourmet food and drink, as well as delectable discussions of murder, mystery and mayhem. You'll find live music in warm, welcoming pubs, as well as lively discussions on our festival stage in a former music hall theatre, with plenty of authors around for lively discussions of your own. Come and get cosy with the crime. There are hidden alleys and ancient byways to explore where murders might quite easily be hidden, and a funicular railway to take you to the top of Constitution Hill, where you can enjoy the Camera Obscura. And if you stay for a few days after the festival, you will be able to enjoy the breathtaking scenery of Ceredigion. The countryside and coast can be viewed by boat or heritage train, on foot and two wheels as well as four. Whether you love exploring lush river valleys, walking unspoiled beaches, or discovering the history of this beautiful area, Aberystwyth and Ceredigion have so much to offer. So come to Gwyl Crime Cymru Festival next spring. You might just discover your new favourite crime writer, as well as your new favourite town. What do you look for in a crime fiction festival?
We're live, Jacky.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this Gwyl Crime Cymru Festival event number 8, Island Crime. And we're able to bring you the festival through the generous financial support of Aberystwyth Town Council and Literature Wales. Thank you to those bodies for their invaluable support. Now, if you've been watching, you'll know that our panels, they begin with a reading, because one of the things that Crime Cymru, the author cooperative, was set up to do was to promote new Welsh writing. So at the start of the panels, we have a 5-minute crime close-up slot to introduce you to new Crime Cymru members. However, this evening's crime close-up slot is a rather special one. Our author this evening, who will be reading to us, is Gwyneth Steady. And the reason this is even more special than all the other lovely authors we've heard read to us is because she is the first ever winner of the Crime Cymru First Novel Prize. Welcome, Gwyneth.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
I should let the viewers know that Gwyneth is coming to us from Norway this evening. So we'll be having a truly international session this evening. Gwyneth, many congratulations on the award.
Thank you very much.
How are you feeling there?
Very nervous.
Don't be nervous, although I know it's easier said than done, but I know that people watching are people who just love to hear from authors, hear about their work, and the chance to hear someone who's probably very new to most of us in their writing is so special. So I'll leave you to it. I'll let you introduce yourself and wish you all the very best.
Well, Thank you very much. Well, hello from a very sunny but cold Norway. I'm currently in Allison with my husband Paul. We're about to start a road journey, a road trip along the Atlantic Road, the famous Atlantic Road. So first of all, thank you ever so much for the Crown Cymru Collective. I'm absolutely thrilled, shocked and delighted to be one of your winners. Absolutely over the moon. I'm from my accent, you might have guessed. I'm originally from Omagh, County Tyrone, Northern Ireland, and that is where I set my first novel, Do Sleeping Dogs Lie. I trained as an occupational therapist in Belfast, and then I moved after training to Wales. I've stayed there ever since, very well settled in Wales. And what have you. My writing journey, if you like, started with a present from my husband. It was a voucher, and the previous years for Christmas he bought me a voucher for a cookery course, so he thought this might have been a safer bet, I don't know, but I appreciated both. In terms of the sort of storyline of Do Sleeping Dogs Lie, it's based around an ex-DI, DI Bell. He's retired to Portrush, but he spent all his time, his working career in Omagh. And he thought he wanted to retire. He thought he wanted that peace and quiet, but he's actually bored. And a chance meeting with another retired couple lead him to investigating a cold case, events that happened in the late 1980s in and around Omagh. However, the more he investigates, unbeknownst to him, the greater danger he's leading himself into. So where I'm starting here is in 1988. Duncan and Trevor are going to a pub. Duncan loosened his collar with his free hand and pulled down his tie. He had heard of Cleeves, of course, but he had taken care not to visit, even when it was suggested as a meeting place by a prospective customer. The green, white and gold painted curbstones didn't help. He'd been straight with Trevor when he had asked for a lift. Not comfortable was the phrase he'd used. He didn't tell Pat where he was going. She would have played hell. 4 miles from town in a staunchly Republican area? Brilliant. Still, they should be safe enough this time in the afternoon, he hoped. Stay for a quick one before my meeting, asked Trevor. But no need for you to wait for me. Probably best you don't. Okay, I'll come in for one. Duncan felt relieved that he wouldn't be around for long. Trevor hadn't said who the meeting was with, and Duncan had absolutely no intention of asking. In this country, what you didn't know kept you safe. And Trevor had kept more and more from Duncan over the last 2 years. About you, Tony? Trevor greeted the barman. Usual, replied Tony. He rose slowly from a position beside the cash register, carefully folded his newspaper and stretched out his back. He ran a hand through his steel grey hair. Duncan looked at Trevor in surprise. A regular in this place? He knew Trevor liked a drink, but this couldn't be a regular watering hole. Surely he had a higher standards and more regard for his safety. Aye, a pint for me and a wee chaser, Trevor turned to Duncan. Usual? Duncan nodded. And a half of the black stuff for my friend here. Trevor sat in one of the bar stools. Duncan looked around him. Game? Duncan asked when he saw the pool table. Nah. $5 in it? Trevor looked at his watch. Sure, if you want to get beat again, I can meet you in McAteer's this evening. About 7. Should be well done by then. There you are. Tony placed the drinks on the counter in front of Trevor. As I'm not rushed off my feet, I'll be out the back. I'm due a delivery. Duncan watched Tony push the swing doors that led to the rear of the pub. He moved back to the bar and took a sip of his drink. Trevor was leaning over the bar, fingering the envelope he had placed in front of him. Trevor, I'm sure you know what you're doing, and I'm happy enough not knowing what you're up to, but thanks for the concern, Trevor smiled. In my line of work, you have to make sure you keep everyone happy. He tapped the envelope with his index finger. As they say, it's not pleasant, but you have to do it. A fact of life if you want a quarry in this province. He took a sip of his whiskey and a gulp of his stout. I know, Trevor, but the door to the pub slammed open. A man in dark clothes and a balaclava, a handgun held out, was walking towards them. Duncan felt his drink slip through his hand. It fell to the floor. The glass shattered. Trevor pushed past him, moved towards the gunman. What the fuck is this? We had a deal, look. Trevor held the envelope out in front of him. It's all in there. Go and talk to the top man. The gunman shook his head, his weapon still pointed towards the two men. For fuck's sake, it's all there, insisted Trevor, his voice weaker. Duncan reached out to Trevor. Trevor calmed. A flash, a deafening noise echoed from the walls. Duncan's ears popped and then started to ring. Trevor slammed into him as if he was jumping backwards. Duncan fell to the floor, Trevor on top of him. Duncan's face was wet, his eyes stung. Through blurred vision, he could see that the gunman was now closer, his eyes narrowing. Duncan cleared his face with his left hand. The gunman lowered his weapon, turned, and walked out of the room. Thank you very much.
Gwyneth, thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear from you. And again, many congratulations. And we look forward very much to hearing more from you.
I hope you do. Thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Gwyneth Steady, everyone, a name to watch out for, and winner of that Crime Cymru First Novel Prize. So, speaking of excellent crime fiction, our two authors tonight that are gathered to discuss Island Crime are two authors whose work bears the hallmark of place, space, and deep, deep, dark secrets. The first author that I'd like to introduce really needs no introduction, and that is Anne Cleeves. Anne, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Jackie. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for being part of the Gwyl Crime Cymru Festival. For anybody who isn't familiar with Anne, I should say she is the critically acclaimed and award-winning author of the Vera, Shetland, and Matthew Venn crime fiction series. She's written over 35 novels, and her work has been translated into many languages. And the TV series and the books that they're based on have become international sensations in capturing the mind of millions worldwide. And more recently, Anne's Reading Coaches project, which provides support for health and well-being in communities. For that, Anne was awarded an OBE in the New Year's Honours List for services to reading and libraries. Anne, could you just tell us a tiny bit about that project, and congratulations on the OBE?
Well, thank you. Well, I might have sort of thrown the idea out, but it's other people who are doing the work. And we've got 9 workers in 5 local authorities in the Northeast, working in probably the most deprived areas in the Northeast. And the idea really is that reading makes you feel better. It's an escape. If you've got chronic pain or mild depression, mild anxiety, getting lost in a book, we think can help. And so we're working with GPs, with libraries, with volunteers, and we've got academics from Newcastle and Northumbria University evaluating the project. And I've been going out visiting some of the projects now, and such amazing work is being done. Sometimes, so in some areas, it's with families who've had kids during lockdown. So they've had babies who haven't been able to go to mother and baby groups, haven't had the support of grandparents. And I was speaking to a couple of mums last week and just saying that this time to talk about books, the time to read, to be encouraged once again. One of the mums said, "Oh, it's so good. I feel like me again." And so I'm just delighted with the way it's going.
It's fabulous, Anne. Thank you for that. I'm going to come back and ask you so many more questions about your work, but if you'll allow me to welcome in our next author. I'll be back with you in just a minute. So, award-winning author and playwright Lilja Sigurdardottir, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Coming to us from Iceland, from just outside Reykjavik this evening, am I correct?
You are correct, yes.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you so much. For people, again, who aren't familiar with you and your writing. So Lilja was born in Iceland, but then spent quite a bit of her childhood and youth a worldwide traveller, in particular Mexico, Sweden, Spain, and then back to Iceland. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about those travels and what that might have done with regard to how you write your crime fiction. To date, if I'm correct, I think we have 5 of your crime novels in translation, and there's another one due out in October. Wonderful, wonderful. All translated by the amazing Quentin Bates, and published by Orenda. These include Snare Trap and Cage, the Reykjavik Noir trilogy. There's a standalone Betrayal, and these hit the bestseller lists. And then the most recent, Cold as Hell. Cold as Hell is the first in a new series with a new protagonist, Aurora Jónsdóttir, working in tandem with Daniel Hansen. And again, I'm going to come back and ask you about that partnership. Lilja's also worked as a screenwriter, recently working on the highly successful Icelandic Netflix thriller Katla. And again, I think I read very recently that it's been nominated for a Best Drama Award in Iceland.
Yes, they nominate 3 dramas, and it's one of them. So we are very happy. We are very proud, all of us that worked on this series.
Hello, Lilja. Hi, was it me? Did we lose me?
We lost you for a moment there.
What happened there? Maybe it was the talk of Katla, and knowing the way that the story follows there.
Yes. Is it you or is it not you?
Who can say? Apologies for that technical moment. I don't know what happened there, but I'm thrilled to be back. Lilja, so tell us, this award that the program's been nominated for, what is that?
It's the main prize in Iceland for film and TV. So it's called Eddan, as all our prizes have a certain name, you know, but it's the Icelandic Film Awards. So we are very pleased. It got nominated in a lot of categories, and then as the drama of the year. So the whole team is really chuffed. Yes.
And when will the awards be announced?
It's not until autumn. I think it's October. Yeah. So they have this. We have this long period of wait, and it's nice to be nominated because it helps the promotion of the program. So
indeed.
Good. Yeah.
Indeed. Now, so the focus of our panel is island crime. And so what I would like to do is invite you both to start with to talk about Anne. We'll go to Shetland if you don't mind. I know there's different places we could talk about with your writing, as with Lilja, but as we're talking Ireland, let's head to Shetland and Iceland. Then Lilja, for you, and I'd like to know, what do these islands mean to you? Anne, would you set us off?
Yeah, for me, the Shetland island that I know best is Fair Isle, and it's the smallest inhabited and most remote, not the smallest, the most remote inhabited island in the UK. And I first went there after I dropped out of university and went off to be assistant cook in the bird observatory there, not really knowing where Fair Isle was, but it's the most southerly of the Shetland Islands. And it feels like a sanctuary to me, I suppose. When I'm miserable or upset, it's where I want to be, because I've got friends there and such wonderful memories there. And so it's a bit odd, I suppose, that I should choose it to kill off lots of people. But I do. I have gone to Shetland and used it as a place for murder, because I think, a bit like Iceland, there are very few trees in Shetland. There are long horizons and big skies, and you would think that you could see everything that was going on there, as you can see for miles. And it's that contrast between the open landscape and the hidden secrets that I really love. And quite often they're secrets that everybody knows but don't speak about. Because if you live in a very small, very tight community, you can't be too open because you would all go mad. So there are things that everybody knows, but is too tactful to mention.
People don't mention it. I loved what you said, though, about how it's a place where, you know, even after all these years, that, you know, that it's a place where you go back because it feels like a safe space to go back to, even though it's a place where you cause madness and mayhem in your books. But that notion that for you, it's a place where you can go, and the solitude, the chance to think. And I wondered if it's all right to ask that even though, you know, the Shetland series has come to a close, the sense of going back there, is it still important to you?
Oh, absolutely, still important to me. I finished writing the Shetland books with Wildfire, and that came out quite soon after my husband died, and I met him in Fair Isle, and he's sort of part of my Shetland story. I'd already decided to stop writing about Shetland when he died, but it seemed just the right time to do it. But still I went back. Yes, one of the first places I went was to go and stay with old friends in Fair Isle, and I've been back lots of times since to go back and recapture some of that magic and that peace. And we have a sort of ritual that when my grandchildren hit about 8 or 9 or 10, they come with Granny to Shetland. So we do the overnight boat, and we arrive into Shetland early in the morning, and we stay with a friend of mine. And some of them hate it. Some of them just can't cope with it. But most of them find it as magic as I do.
Lovely. Anne, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Lilja, for yourself then, Iceland, home, but what does that island mean to you?
Well, I always, there is always a special feeling coming home, and so many times in my life I've been going away and coming back. So it's always like it always feels like home, even if maybe I've spent equal amount of time elsewhere. But it's something about Iceland that I feel it's a very, very energetic place, and I think it's because it's a baby island. It's a country that's being born, where the tectonic plates rip apart and up comes a new country. So I always think of it as a very creative place because it's a country that's being created. So that's a connection I have in my mind to it. I think it's a good place to create. Yeah.
I'd just be interested, though, to say, that's a place where you think creativity, a place where, all things are in flux and flow. Yeah. Do you feel the same when you're elsewhere, though?
Well, I think when you are a creative person, you get inspiration everywhere, and you get inspiration also from, in places that are very different to your own home. But I think, the feeling of creativity in Iceland is maybe because Icelanders have to, in their life, to be a bit creative, because the country itself gives us a lot of surprises. So you have to improvise. You cannot be as planned as, for example, English people can plan everything down in detail. And in Iceland, you can plan something, and then comes winter and you're stuck somewhere, or there's a volcanic eruption or a weather warning and you can't go. And I think it's a bit similar to Shetland. You have to be adaptive, towards the elements and ready to just make something else up, even if you had planned something completely different. So there comes in the creative element, how to do, best out of situations, and maybe something more fun comes out of broken plans,
Thank you for that. And I should say, for everybody watching, please, if you have questions for our authors, do write them in the chat, because as we've been doing during the festival, we'll take those questions at the end. Lilja, you mentioned about how plans can change, and very often, especially in winter, that's due to the weather. The weather, that atmospheric element, often in crime fiction writing. So I'll come back to you, Anne, and it's a question to both of you. And I just wondered, are there any experiences that you've had with the weather on Shetland, in Iceland, where it might have been treacherous. And from that, you thought, I must put that into one of my novels. Or maybe you thought, I can't put that, it'll scare the readers too much. I don't know. Anne, has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah. I can think of two occasions. One is Shetland. One is flying into Fair Isle in a gale in a little 8-seater plane. And I'm relatively nervous flyer anyway. And I can remember bouncing around, going in at this horrible flight with this tiny, just being, having no sense of weight of the plane at all, because it was, and then dipping under the cliff and just landing on the airstrip as the wind caught it. And the pilot taking off his headphones and saying, shouldn't really have done that. But I could practice sometimes for the ambulance flights. That was fairly scary. And I have used that in one of the Shetland books. But even more scary was a different island. And this was the tidal island of Hilbury, where Tim and I first lived. And it's very small. It's only 11 acres. We were the only people living there. And you could walk over it at low water, not across a causeway, but across the sand and the rocks. And it was a little nature reserve. And so I would walk backwards and forwards very often because I was going out to work. And just got very complacent and thought I knew it very well, and walked out one morning in very thick fog. And about halfway across, realized that I was just totally lost, and the tide was coming in. And the tide doesn't come straight in, it could come behind you and fill up gullies. And I was really very, very frightened at that point. Just imagining that I was walking round and round in circles in this fog, couldn't see the mainland at all, couldn't see back to the island, and finally heard a dog barking and headed for that, and ended up on the mainland a couple of miles actually from where I would normally come ashore. And I used that both in a short story called Stranded, but also in a novel, one of the early novels.
Wow. The inspiration of nature. Thank you. Lilja, has it happened for you with the weather in Iceland?
Yeah, many times. I can't really think of a specific incident in weather that I've used in my books, but I do it all the time. You know, it's bound to be used. You know, lots of snow, or like in my latest Cold as Hell, where we have this really fresh summers. You know, we think they are great, but they are really not that great. But yeah, I have been in Shetland with Ann Cleeves, and it was so windy. It was almost like home. It's these islands that are in the middle of the Gulf Stream, in the middle of the ocean. I mean, it's the weather changes so fast, and that is what makes it dangerous. Is that you go out in a certain weather and you end up in something completely different half an hour later. So yeah, that's interesting, and it's of course an inspiration, and it's so nice to have access to these weathers in our stories to make spooky atmosphere and danger.
Definitely, and almost, you know, I think in those geographical locations, both the weather, but also then the geography. So let's go to the geography. And Lilja, I wonder, you know, the landscape of Iceland, for people who might not be familiar with those places, how do you think they suit so well to a crime story?
It's probably, part of it is the darkness. You know, we have Arctic winters here. The darkest time of winter, we have 4 hours of daylight. So darkness is always atmospheric, and it's noir. You know, it's you know, dark things happen in the darkness. But it's also, I mean, we have a very rough landscape here, and you know, I use it as inspiration, is that even if we don't have many murders per year, we have quite a lot of people that go missing. So people disappear in Iceland, a few people every year. So, and the bodies are usually not found because we have these vast lava fields that are very rugged with deep crevices and cracks in them. We have glaciers with cracks. We have big deserts, biggest deserts in Europe that are, you know, out of the grid and very big, way too big to search. And then we have the cold mountain lakes, very cold, so bodies that go into them don't float up, and then sea all around. So there is you know, ample opportunities to hide bodies. So this is what I use as inspiration. You know, I ask myself, what happened to all the people in the missing persons list?
And that, I mean, and that is a lovely recurring theme, both in Cold as Hell and in Katla, is it not? The idea of people, those people who disappear, and whatever those reasons might be, and how the landscape often plays a part in that disappearance. Thank you, Lilja. And the landscape of those Shetland Islands, how have they lent themselves for you to create such a wonderful, you know, successful series with Jimmy Perez?
I think a bit like Iceland, which I love too. It's that there are very small communities and everybody knows each other. So if somebody goes missing or somebody is killed, it affects the whole community. There are only 21,000 people in all the Shetland Islands, in all it's an archipelago of several islands. And so probably people are related or they know each other very closely. And I think that makes for the sort of quite traditional murder mysteries that I write. You know, in the tradition almost of the Golden Age, you can't write that maybe in a village in the south of England now, because there are commuters and people aren't that interested in each other's business, and they've moved in or they're working from home, and that sense of a community that has been there for generations is lost. Of course, there are incomers coming into Shetland, there always have been, but still there is that sense of a very close place. And I can remember talking to teenagers once who found it really quite tricky, because they would, if they said that they were working at a friend's, somebody would have seen them on a ferry going to a party in Brescia or going out to Walser to see their boyfriend. It is very hard to get away with anything in Shetland.
And I love the strap line that comes with Wildfire, and it's on a small island, rumours can be deadly.
Yeah.
You know, as you say, so there's really close communities, and everybody knows everybody else's business. Yeah. That
or think they
life.
do, or think they do, and if they don't know, they'll make up a story to it, try and explain what's going on.
Yeah, let's stick with the geography for a moment. And I wonder if somebody were to land in Reykjavik or Keflavik, Lilja, or someone was to go with you to the Shetland Isles, and I'd love to know, you can only take them to one place, okay, one geographical location on those islands. Lilja, where would you take your guest and why?
Oh, well, I would probably take them to the most ugly place in Iceland. That's the Reykjanes Peninsula, where the airport actually is. It's that flat lava that you drive through on your way from the airport to Reykjavik, and it's from the road it looks really ugly. And Icelanders always said this is the ugliest part of Iceland because it hasn't really got any waterfalls or sheep or any green grass or any tree or anything that we think is nice. But it's actually a very interesting area. It's a vast field of lava, and it has become an interest again because we had the volcanic eruption there last year, and it hasn't been alive geographically for 800 years, but now it's alive again. So our airport might be in trouble. But we have a new volcano there that's interesting to see, and we have newly run lava, and I think it's interesting for us, but it's also interesting, I think, for people that haven't seen what the volcano does to see it. The black raw, rock that comes up molten and flows like candle wax everywhere. And I am interested in this place right now because I am writing my 10th novel now. It's the 4th in the Aurora series. And this part of the country comes into the story. I can't really say why. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. So that's where you would take your visitor. Thank you for that, to see that volcanic area, and what might be happening there. That's great. Thank you. Anne, where would you take yours?
I think it would depend on the time of year, but if it was midsummer, and next year, 2023, the islands are doing another crime writing festival. They're called Shetland Noir, which will be in June. Are you listening, Lilja? It's from the 18th of June. Put it in your diary.
Lovely, so, I will.
So midsummer, and then it's not quite as light as it is in Iceland, but it's still pretty much light all night. And Shetlanders call it the simmer dim, which is the summer dusk. And I would take you on a little boat from the east side of Shetland mainland to the island of Musa. And there's an Iron Age broch there. It's one of the most, which is a kind of tower, a double-skinned tower with steps going up the middle of the two skins. And you would arrive there at maybe midnight. And it's just getting dark. And all the storm petrels, the tiny little seabirds, come into the broch to breed. And so it's completely magical. You can stand there, you can climb to the top of the broch, and you can hear these storm petrels coming into the dry stone walls. And then we would get the boat back, and by that time it's perhaps 3 o'clock in the morning and the sun's just starting to come up again.
It's lovely.
Beautiful. What adventures that you've both provided us with. And I think the way that you tell us these things, I think it is so clear that you are writers, because you tell us about those travels. And I don't know about the rest of the people watching, but I've just been to those two spaces that you've described for us. Thank you. But what about your main protagonists? So again, if we stick with Jimmy Perez for Shetland, and Aurora for Iceland, and how does Jimmy relate to those island surroundings?
In the books, Jimmy has come back. He'd gone south and got divorced and come back. He appears in Raven Black, the first book of the Shetland series, and that was always going to be a standalone novel. And it's a book about what it takes to belong, how do outsiders move into a community and belong. And most of the suspects in that book are outsiders in some form or another. There's Magnus, who's an elderly guy whose family has lived there for generations, but still he's considered a bit of an outsider because he's alone and he's slow and people don't quite understand him. And then there's the young teenage girl who, and I've never met a teenage girl who feels that she fits in exactly. She's either too thin or too fat, or she doesn't have friends, or she has the wrong sort of friends. And so I wanted a central character who belonged but also didn't quite belong. So I created Jimmy, and he comes from Fair Isle, because to most Shetlanders, Fair Isle is the end of the known universe, because you have to go in the most horrible mail boat in the world to get there, or one of those tiny planes. And I give him that Spanish name because there was an Armada ship wrecked off Fair Isle. So it's not beyond the bounds of credibility that one of the sailors, there were 60 survivors, married an island woman, and that the name is continuing. So that's how he arrived.
And the going back, is he happy in those surroundings? Does it resonate with him, to be back on the islands?
Yeah, and I think it does, but then he's maybe wanting to think about going back to Fair Isle too, and his mother would love him to go and take over the croft, but he stays in Shetland mainland, and works there. Throughout the course of the 8 books, at least.
Thank you. Thanks, Anne. Lilja, so Aurora and her relation, sort of like that she has with Iceland.
Yes, we have a theme there. It's very much a story about belonging and how and what it takes to belong to a nation or a country and a family. This is something that I wanted to do because of my life experiences of always coming back to Iceland, because it's a very small culture, so it changes very fast. So every time you go away for some period of time and you come back, something has changed, but some things are also very much the same. So Aurora is half English, half Icelandic. So she has an English mother and an Icelandic father, and the family moved to Newcastle when the girls were young, Aurora and her sister, and then she comes back to Iceland to look for her sister that has gone missing, and I wanted to use her to describe Iceland and some things and quirks in the culture like an outsider sees them. She recognizes this, but she has another perspective of these things because she has been away, and she thinks many of those habits are quite ridiculous, because she has experienced other things and was raised with other things. So so we have a theme there in these island stories, is like coming back to your old life in a way.
I think, yes, if you live in a small island or a small country, lots of young people do go away because they want to explore the world, but then they come back because it's home and it pulls them back.
Yeah, that's true.
And Aurora and the landscape, especially, seeing as she's not been living there for a while, how does she fare with that setting?
Well, her father, because he was kind of wanted to bind his girls to the country, he names them these names. Aurora is the it can both mean dawn but it also means the aurora borealis, the northern lights that we have here plenty in winter. And the other sister, the one that goes missing, is called Ísafold, which is an old name of Iceland. It's like a female name of the country itself, so it's like a character that is Iceland. So they have this link. They are themselves bound to the country with their names. But Aurora, in the second book in the series, Red as Blood, that is coming in October, she is searching for her sister, and it's clear that the sister is probably not alive anymore. And the police say it's likely that she has been murdered in her flat, but the body, nobody knows where it is. So Aurora is searching, and that gives this connection to the land. She is driving all these empty little roads and paths and using a drone to search for something that's unusual in the surroundings. And it gives you this feeling of how big this country is, because Iceland is not a small country. It's a small nation in a very big land, in fact, and most of it is uninhabited. It's not populated by people, so it's a lot of work for Aurora to do, to search the surroundings of Reykjavik for a body.
Thank you. So that idea of, and I'll stop with this question, and then if Louise can come in when we've dealt with this question, and it's so talking about these spaces and those vast uninhabited or those wild coastal areas. Do you think, lovely authors, do you think that it is only now in places like this that it is possible to get away with murder? Anne, what do you think?
Oh no, I mean, it's probably easier to get away with murder in a city where you can be relatively anonymous, I think. I did ask a pathologist friend of mine, forensic pathologist friend of mine, who would have investigated if there'd been an unusual death in Shetland. You know, that somebody asked him when we were on a panel together, what's the perfect way of killing people? And he said, well, if you've got a cliff and you push somebody over a cliff, nobody is ever going to be able to tell whether they were pushed or whether they fell. So for him, that was the perfect murder.
Yeah, that lack of CCTV probably. Yeah. Lilja, would it be fair to say that that's probably the best way to dispatch someone in Iceland?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, the rugged nature in these places, you know, and the cliffs and the sea and all that. But at the same time, if you are a murderer, it's very hard to get away, and that is, I think, partly. Crime in island places is quite rare, actually. Even if you look at like populated areas that have lots of tourists, like the Canary Islands, I mean, serious crime is quite rare there because it's you can't get away, you know. Like in Iceland, there's one international airport and one ferry port. So if you're gonna escape after, you know, committing a crime, it's gonna be hard, you know. You have to swim, or you know, I don't know how, but no, and it's also I think the size of the community as well. But the nature gives opportunities. It does. Yeah.
Not that we're advocating that anybody should either go to Shetland or to Iceland to try these things, not at all. So I wonder if it would be possible to welcome Louise Mumford. Hi, Louise. For anybody who hasn't been watching any events previously, just to let people know that Louise is the co-chair of Crime Cymru. Louise, do you have questions for these authors?
Of course I have questions. We have loads of questions.
Yeah.
I'm the mistress of questions, so prepare yourself. First of all, just I'm making a note of the chucking somebody off a cliff is the best way to kill them, just in case, putting that in my mental brain bank, just in case I ever do need to kill anyone. However, I've now just said that on a live panel, so everyone would know that it was me if I was ever under suspicion. So perhaps my life as a criminal is not on the cards. So the first question, we've got about 3 questions, which are on the same theme, and they're all about isolation. So Alex asks, why does, what is it about the power of isolation that fascinates you in particular? And I'm going to just tack on Jin's question, which is, does isolation stimulate creativity? If we start with Anne first.
I like being in wild and empty places, and I have the best of both worlds here in the northeast of England because I live on the coast, but then I've got a place up in the hills where I can go and I can really be alone there. So I can leave the house, walk all day on public footpaths on a bank holiday and not see anybody. And when I'm stuck with a novel, that's where I go. I walk it out until something triggers in my brain and I can pull it all together. So yeah, isolation is great for creativity, I think. But then you need to come back to the coast. I need to come back and meet my friends and go for a coffee and do all the things that you can do when there are other people around.
Lilja?
Yes, I agree with this completely. I think authors, in fact, are introverts, and we need the time, you need the continuity of like a stillness to do your work, because you do it most in your head, and then, you know, the writing is just the labor. But at the same time, you know, you kind of drain yourself like a battery, and then you have to charge, and then you do that in like in a social context with people and with new places and new experiences and food, and you know, so you need to go and charge yourself. But I think the isolation and it's like the hermit like lifestyle is something that most writers need in a way. I think those that say they don't and sit in cafes writing, they are alone in their minds, you know, even if, you know, there's a lot of things going on around them, because you need that headspace, if it's called that in English.
Yeah, it is. Picking up on that, actually, that sense of being social creatures,
yeah,
and that kind of belonging as well. And this is for Lilja from Louise. In Cold as Hell, there are strong family dynamics.
Mm.
How important do you feel this is as part of a crime storyline?
I think it's very interesting, and I'm getting more and more interested in family and in the, I don't know if it's called the domestic noir. That's quite a thing now, and I'm getting more interested in it because these questions, how well do you know someone that's close to you? I think it can be very interesting. But family dynamics, I mean, families are like a miniature of society, just with stronger feelings involved, and all these connections and what people mean to each other and how they interact. I think it's very interesting, and I am using this in the relationship of the two sisters in Cold as Hell, that are very different characters, don't really have much in common, but they are bonded by family and by the love that comes with. And yeah, this is it's material, isn't it? Like all relationships.
And this one is really for both of you. This is from Alison, and she wonders what set you on your path to writing. What triggered your first feeling that this is something that you wanted to do? Was it at a young age or when you were older? If we start with Anne with that one.
I think I was always an observer rather than a participant. So I was always on the outside looking in. And that makes you a storyteller because you're trying to explain what's going on when you're a child. And that just grew really. And I read a lot and never thought that I would ever be published. But it was being stuck on that little island, the tidal island of Hilbury, with very little to do if you're not into birds, and I'm not, that gave me a chance to write, because I did have the time and the space there to do it, and killed off a bird watcher.
I was going to say, lucky for us that you weren't into birds in that case. Otherwise, we would have just lost you to bird watching, and we would never have had the books.
Absolutely.
Phew, that's brilliant. Lilja, what about you?
Yeah, I've always liked reading and writing from a young age, you know, but I didn't do it seriously, like fiction writing, until I saw an advertisement for a competition. It was called the New Dan Brown. So I decided that must be me. So I sent in I wrote a novel and sent it in, and yeah, that was the start of it, really.
So is it actually having that almost outside validation that gave you the confidence then to feel that you could?
I think it was like a push, like, come on, do it, you can do this. And I was like, crime novel, that could be interesting. So yes, and then it's a safe way to try out if you can do this, if it works for you. And it did work for me, luckily. Yeah.
And
if it didn't, I probably would just have continued my job. I was a school inspector and I was writing a lot and enjoying it, writing like handbooks for teachers and reports for the ministry and all sorts of things. And I've always enjoyed writing, putting my thoughts into text. And I think all writing is good practice for fiction writing. I am still a very, very fast writer today.
I think if you're in the education world, you have to be pretty fast at everything.
Yes.
You don't have much time.
That's a good point.
Yeah. This is for both of you from Julie. Do you have any advice for writers who are currently using unusual or isolated locations in their novels? What would be your advice for them, or just general advice, I guess, if you haven't got anything in particular for the island? I'm giving you a bit of time to think. Well, I do. I know sometimes.
I think my first advice would be get to the end quite quickly. This is general advice. Yeah. That there is a tendency when you start off to polish the first couple of chapters because it's safe. You know, you think that you want the first chapters to be perfect. You need to just get that story down, get the first draft down and get to the end. Then you can feel secure and go back and edit and rework and rewrite. But it is important to get that first draft down. And it's really hard when you're starting. Getting to the end of something is really tricky.
It is, yeah.
You can't do anything with something that's unfinished. But
no, I don't think so. Yeah,
and do something with it.
Yeah,
that's very good advice. I think I would add to this that your story, the story you are telling, has to be something that you are passionate about. I don't think you can. I don't think it will be good if you're writing a story that you're thinking like, what will work? What will other people like to read? I think you have to write the story that you would like to read, you know, and then somebody else will like it too. I don't think you can feel out the market and see what's, you know, there. Even if you are passionate for a story that's been done many times, maybe you can tell it in a different way and it will be new for a reader. So I think go with your passion. It's, you know, I think it's a good advice.
Yeah. Don't write for the market, because if you write for the market, by the time you finished your book, something else will be big.
Yeah.
It'll be a different market by the time you finished. Yeah. Robert wonders if either of you have a favourite book that's set on an island. Island set books that you like. I'm trying to think of one of mine.
I love all the Icelandic writers because they do that really. They do it so well, that dark and that. But I suppose the first Icelandic writer I read and still love is Arlander Indridason. He's like the grandfather of Icelandic crime, and I'm still very, very fond of his book.
Yes. I would, of course, Anne comes quickly to mind, but there is an Icelandic author that has stopped writing, unfortunately, called Viktor Arnar Ingólfsson. And he wrote an excellent story that takes place on a small island in West Iceland called Flatey. And it's called the Flatey Enigma. And it connects to like old manuscripts and has this kind of mysterious element about it. And it's a very, very good story. And I think it's available in English on...
Yeah.
Probably online, you can buy it. And there was a TV series made from it, but the book is much better. That's one of my favorite island stories, but you could probably make it a whole its own genre, you know.
And always with those questions, when someone asks, "What's your favorite whatever book?"
Yeah, it's
out of my head.
You know,
I completely forget every book that I've ever read.
Yeah.
And I know that we're running out of time, but if I can just squeeze one last question in, will you let me, Jacky, squeeze in?
I'm sure we can squeeze, and only if I'm allowed one last question to these authors when you're finished. Can we? Is that all right?
Pinky promise.
Yeah, right.
Pinky promise. So my last question would be to Lilja. This is from Manuela. Do you write in the Icelandic language? How well do you think that translates, or do you write in English?
That's a very interesting question. I write in Icelandic, but Icelandic is a very, very old, very archaic language, and it is quite difficult to translate, I think. The grammar is difficult. We have a lot of words that have double or triple meaning and so on. But my translator, Quentin Bates, who is also a crime writer, he used to live in Iceland, so he knows the culture quite well. So I think his translations are excellent. But it's a funny feeling because English, my books are translated into many languages, but English is the only language I can read successfully, you know, for my enjoyment of these languages. And it's so strange to read your own story in translation because the text doesn't feel like it's yours, but you recognize the story, you know. And I like it very much. I read over the translations and it's always fun to do. I don't think, well, I maybe could write a short story or something in English, but I think it would be very tiring to write a whole novel. But some Icelanders are doing that. So because it's when you write in a mini language, you kind of get locked into it. So I am one of those lucky ones that have gotten you know, bigger readership and gotten translations into other languages. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm very lucky with that because so many people in Iceland write very good books that never go out of Iceland, you know. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will leave you in Jacky's very capable hands to ask her final question and then to wrap up the panel. Thanks. It's been really busy in the chat room. Everyone's really enjoyed your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we've been on islands and we've been thinking crime on islands, but I wanted to finish off with something a little frivolous because it's been quite dark and it's in keeping a little bit with Desert Island Discs, but we won't do music, but that idea that people who are on that program are allowed a luxury item. Mm-hmm. So if you were told that you had to spend your life, and maybe not Iceland, Lilja, because it's a bit of a big island to be stranded on. Let's take a smaller island, maybe Flatey. Say you've got to go, you know, and you must live there from now on, and you must write from there. And Anne, on you know, maybe back to Fair Isle, what would be your luxury item that you would take?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. See, I did Desert Island Discs and I took paper and pen, but that doesn't seem like much of a luxury now, does it?
No, branch out a little bit more and treat yourself. There's no limits to the extent of the luxury that you could choose.
I think a very, very comfortable bed and a lovely duvet and a nice pillow. That's what I would like. Really high class, big thread cotton, you know, Egyptian cotton sheets, all that.
Yeah.
Lovely. So the bed and the linens and everything, yeah. Lilja, what would yours be?
I'm such a simple person. I think really, really good coffee, like dark roast, strong aromatic coffee would be my thing, because it's just terrible when you are out, you know, and being stuck in Flatey without proper coffee would be not good.
Not good without the coffee.
No. But I would appreciate Anne's bed as well, you know. Yeah, it sounds lovely.
You share your coffee, I'll share my bed.
Lovely. We have a deal there.
And this is what the crime fiction community is all about. That idea of sharing stories, sharing the luxuries. And Cleeves, Lilja Sigurdardottir, thank you so much for our time together in discussion, talking about your work and talking about those very personal aspects of being a writer. It's been absolutely wonderful, such a thrill to be in conversation together. Thank you so much, and wish you all the very best with your latest projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jacky. And
pleasure.
thanks, Lilja. See you in Shetland.
See you in Shetland then. Looking forward to it.
See you all in Shetland. Be there.